This is the Sports Content Game Plan, the podcast where we go behind the scenes with the creators shaping how we see sports today. I'm your host, Isaac Solina, and each week I have conversations with the people behind the videos, photos, stories, and strategies that brings the game to life. We talk creativity, storytelling, and the real work that happens behind every highlight. In today's episode, I'm joined by LJ Rader, creator and curator of the famous social media accounts Art But Make It Sports. We chat about his work, how art and sports are intertwined, his workflow, his photographic memory, no AI, the new book, and much, much more. Let's get it going. LJ, welcome to the game plan.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
How are you today?
Good. Knicks are in the finals, so they haven't lost any games yet, so we're doing all right.
That is nice. I'm really excited for this conversation, and we'll get into it in a bit, but I just wanted to start with some quick questions. So, do you have any favorite channel or social media?
I'm like trying to stay off social media, so it's like getting rid of things that I visit. I listen to a lot of minor league baseball podcasts and follow a lot of people that do like minor league baseball scouting. So there's that. I don't ever go on YouTube. I'm kind of at the behest of whatever the Twitter algorithm serves me up. I don't really follow things in particular, and just consuming a lot of Knicks content. So whoever's writing and reporting about the Knicks, I tend to gravitate towards.
I guess my next question was if you have any favorite type of content. So I guess minor league baseball podcast then.
I enjoy journalists and reporters. I enjoy people that not just break news, but that actually do like deeper dives into interesting sports things and art things that I can then consume, and that I don't have to put in the legwork to necessarily research myself. So I'm a big fan of like consumable journalism, if that's a term. And then one of my interests is what's called Dynasty Baseball. Always trying to keep up on who the latest prospects are. And then on the art side, it's a lot of like, what are the newest shows that are opening that I should check out? And, I live in New York, so like, what are the vibes at the New York museums and exhibitions that are coming up, and kind of help me plan on what I would go see.
Do you have any favorite creators that you are inspired by?
Let's see. It's funny. I don't even think of myself. I guess I think of myself as kind of a creator, but not necessarily like an influencer. More, I'm just like my silly musings, putting them out there and creating them, but I'm not necessarily trying to influence anybody to do much of anything other than consume more of my stuff. A favorite creator. I like, I guess he goes by a few different names, but Pants, Mr. Joshua, Pants World, the cartoonist. But I guess I'd elevate him past a cartoonist and more of a fine artist that captures the pulse of the internet and just life in general via drawings that manifest themselves as cartoons. But yeah, big fan of his. So.
And do you have any favorite DM you have received?
So when I first started the account, I was pretty reliant on myself for finding imagery. So like finding the viral moments and, scouring through. Now there's just such a large community that I'm constantly tagged in images. So I really enjoy whether it's a DM or a notification of being tagged in an image that I'm already tagged in. Because then if I get enough people, like, all right, enough people want me to, focus in on this. And if I post something interesting, that's the thing that's going to resonate with the community. So, yeah, it's less about like a specific DM and more just the nature of a bulk of notifications / messages that allow me to then understand without having to, be necessarily tuning in myself or scrolling myself. Then I can then say, okay, this is the thing. That's what I run with.
And if you would use 3 words, what is great content to you?
Unique, um, original, I guess kind of ties into unique, and timely. I think those are 3 things that I try to bake into my work, but also 3 things that I think are just important in terms of people creating on the internet, of finding your your special voice and doing things that maybe nobody else is necessarily doing, making sure that, from an original standpoint, you're not ripping off other people's work, and you're sort of always giving proper attribution, and then timely, just in the sense of, the news cycle seems to change every 2 minutes, and the stuff that ends up resonating now, 2 minutes from now, might not even be applicable anymore. So I do enjoy, from that journalistic aspect, especially folks, folks like Pablo Torre, that are tackling things that, he's uncovering that might take months, and he's doing it behind the scenes, and you're not really thinking about it, and his work becomes the topic of the day. And anytime that you can sort of lead the conversation with your content, I think it's a testament to the quality of it. So
I mentioned already to you that your Art But Make It Sports channels are one of my all-time favorite things to follow on social media. And I also got the pleasure to listen to you a few weeks ago at the Gondola Sports Summit and hear your story. But for those who listening now who don't know your story, so where did your journey begin, and this project that you are doing?
for years, I'd go to museums, take photos, and give those photos sports captions, photos of artwork, sports captions, and post them to my personal Instagram account, just for kind of fun and just, I don't know, dumb musings. And eventually had friends convince me to turn it into its own thing. So December 2019, started up the account, and then COVID hit a few months later. So everybody was sort of indoors and looking for things to do. So I kept posting to it, even though there were like, I don't know, 100 people that followed. And eventually Sarah Spain posted about it. A few other people in media started posting about it, and it jumped from 1,000 to 2,000 to 4,000. Grew kind of an audience. And I was, at the time, realized that, so I think back in towards the end of 2020, I was recognizing that instead of just captioning artwork, if I just put the thing that I was captioning next to it in the image, that's what resonated with people. And so started doing that, and it kind of took off. So I basically put pictures of art next to pictures of sports, and 6 years later, here we are. A whole bunch of people that follow, and it's still kind of the same content, which is fun. It's I'd still be doing it if there were still only 100 people that followed, because I enjoy making the connections and kind of testing myself and keeping myself sharp. So, but yeah, now there's now there's a little bit of a bigger audience.
So art and sports have always been like 2 big interests for you?
Yeah, so I actually work in sports. I've always done something, whether it's writing or as a producer on the Olympics. Worked very early on at DraftKings when they were doing only daily fantasy. Interest in sports statistics and data, and then have always had a passion for art, but have more explored that outside of the professional realm. Took an art history class in college, but then just kind of decided to pursue it on my own instead of sort of a formal education. So I've never considered myself to be like an art historian or, be able to like lecture on art theory. Much more on like the knowledge base of different artists and styles and the visuals. But yeah, it developed kind of a encyclopedic memory of artwork, and I've taken 15,000 photos at museums that I have on my phone that I've come to memorize a decent chunk of, and tend to reference those when I make the comparison. So yeah, just sort of followed my little interest, and here we are.
Do you remember like the first post where you really thought like, okay, people really connect with this?
Yeah, there were a few, like anytime that in the early days, I would just do like, a Renaissance painting and a photo of, athletes. And when I started mixing abstract art, that's when it really started to take off. Abstract art, I did like a Clifford still with a Michael Jordan blue dunk photo. And that's when it kind of, maybe that wasn't the first one, but that's like the most memorable one of it kind of clicking of, okay, if you can take something that isn't people to people and it's just sort of abstract art to people and still make it feel real, and that hits on kind of the emotion, the movement, the colors, the reasons why there are actually a lot of parallels between art and sports. I think it kind of took off from there.
And you mentioned some of the things now, but I think like what do you think is the combination between classical art and sports that works so well, both emotionally and visually?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best artists and the best athletes are technicians. There's a lot of practice. There's a lot of focus on your craft, and then within artwork and on the fields and courts, the best athletes and best artists use their training to improvise, and um, you know you could argue that athletes paint a picture with their movement, and there are a lot of similarities in terms of the emotions that like the best athletes make us feel, and quote unquote best art makes you feel. So I really think of them as pretty similar disciplines that just take a little bit of different forms, but at the end of the day, there's still a pretty big visual component that I think matches if you can come up with the right pairing, because it's not just necessarily visual, that if you can capture I guess for lack of a better term, the vibes of what's going on in a sports image and what's going on in a piece of art, then those ones truly hit.
You mentioned now that you get a lot of requests or a lot of you get tagged in a lot of photos and content, but what is it that you like instinctively look for in a sports image?
I like things that are unique at this point. Just like movement and poses and moments that I haven't been able to reference before. I tend to like when it's sports photography as opposed to screenshots. So at this point, a lot of photographers send me their work and the work of their colleagues. So those become kind of the more enjoyable ones to do. Whereas like the screenshots tend to be a little bit more lowbrow. But yeah, it's kind of like the viral moments on the day-to-day of the account. And then I wrote a book, and so I got to focus on like historic imagery, things that I'm sure if I posted would be, people would enjoy it, but they would say like, why are you posting Willie Mays' catch? Like, what's that have to do with what's going on? Whereas in a book form, it's like, okay, like you can't write a book without doing Willie Mays' catch, or Brandy Chastain celebrating winning the World Cup. So it sort of flips the script on basically what the fodder that I get to use for my posts.
I'm interested in like what's your workflow? Do you sit and edit only on your phone? You said you had all your photos in your phone. So how does it work?
Yeah, it's just all on my phone. So I got all my artwork in Google Photos, and then sometimes I'll like see a sports image and it will remind me of a certain artist style or a certain theme in art history. So Wikipedia Commons has a really great library of public domain art to kind of poke through if it's not something that I necessarily have photographed, which honestly becomes the more exciting part, because I guess I think now of my photographic memory is cheating. It's not cheating, but it's like it's easy. Whereas if I can leverage the art history that I've taught myself, that becomes more gratifying. And it's like damn, you didn't know that off the top of your head, but you were able to arrive to that point because of what you've taught yourself. Like that becomes more fun. And so I use I think it's like $19.99 a year, this app called PhotoGrid to put the images next to each other. And then I don't use any AI for any of the matchups or anything or any of the creative process. But I do use Google Lens to save myself from having to take a photo of the nameplate at each museum. It saves me a lot of time and then, frankly, a lot of space in my iCloud. Basically cuts what I need in half. So I can just click Google Lens and it pulls down the information on the artist, the title, the year. So I can include that without having to photograph the nameplate. So yeah, I think of that as not aiding, doesn't aid the creative process in any means, but it does help from a timeliness perspective. And yeah, that's basically it. Tends to come together, and like I said, a lot of people send me images that they've taken themselves, or screen grabs, and that's what I end up using and putting into PhotoGrid.
Nowadays, do you have is it just based on feeling, or do you try to have a certain amount of posts every day or week, or how is the process?
Yeah, try to keep a pretty high editorial bar where there'll be ones that are kind of stuck in the drafts or didn't quite make it, that maybe people would argue are good enough to post, but I try to make sure that what I'm putting out there is really top stuff. So that might be once a day, every other day at this point. But back in the day, I was posting 3 or 4 times a day and kind of firing them off at will. But nowadays, I don't really have time, and I think there's a big enough audience where they're kind of just expecting top quality stuff. So
You mentioned it's a challenge for yourself also. So is it often, or have there been times where have you used the same art for different posts?
yeah, that also people are like, oh, you're cheating, you're using the same art, but oftentimes it's art that's big enough where it's a different detail within the same painting. It's like, oh, you used the Garden Earthly Delights, that's cheating. And it's like, no, it's more impressive because I've got that whole thing memorized, and it's like a triptych that has arguably 100 different individual scenes, and I'm referencing different parts of it. Every once in a while, I'll use the same component of a painting just because there's just so many new followers that it ends up being people haven't really, a majority of the count of the people that follow haven't seen that piece of artwork. But yeah, I try to always, I try at least to use fresh stuff and different angles and different details of artwork.
You've done a lot of posts since 2019. So, but do you have any favorite ones?
Honestly, the next one, it is kind of like a drug for me to think up, these new comparisons. Which is again when people say that I use AI, it's that would strip away the joy of doing the account, because I derive my dopamine hit from coming up with the comparison. So yeah, it's once I make something, it kind of just fades into the background, and I'm always just thinking about what is the next thing that I can make. And when I'm in the moment of thinking through what can this thing be, I tend to that is when what do the kids say, you kind of lock in and you enter that flow state. So that's what I'm always chasing. It's my favorite thing to be doing is being locked into that flow state and then coming up with that comparison.
But have there been moments where you felt creatively stuck or worried about the concept running out of steam or something like that?
Kind of, but I guess I've always just seen art through a sports lens, and so that's just never changed. And I don't really think about it as a concept. Obviously, I know it is, and I know it's an account, but it is just kind of how my brain works and what I'm thinking about anyways. And there'll be moments where I'm heavily focused on coming up with the thing, but I don't really think of myself as doing this to maintain the account. I just do it to do it. And so I think that's made it a little bit easier to just keep doing it because I just like doing it.
I was also thinking about if your inspiration creatively has changed compared to when you started, but maybe it's just the dopamine hits.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always striving to like come up with something that's great. Part of it is I can personally quantify a little bit of what I consider to be great. And then there is with social media a built-in feedback loop of what other people think are great, and sometimes I agree with it, and sometimes I don't. Um, Both from like a likes and reposts perspective, but then there's also the comment section of people giving written feedback, and sometimes you lose some of the context of the images that get used, and that's no fun on social media. So you got to kind of navigate that world, but I still, at the end of the day, just kind of do it because I enjoy it versus catering to anybody in particular. But now I guess the account has taken on a little bit of additional meaning and pressure. But
Art but making sports is incredibly niche and very unique. So I'm thinking, have there been like copycats or people trying to do the same thing?
there have been a few that have popped up over the years, like here and there. But most of it is like just one-offs of people noticing things, and they make their own. They're usually referencing pretty mainstream art. It's like I get a lot of like the Scream coming up, and like the Sistine Chapel of the fingers, and which is fine. But yeah, it's kind of I see people do it with like fashion, um, but a lot of stuff is like one-off posts that people might send me or tag me in.
Speaking of finding your niche, what would you say are like your top tips for finding a niche in this sports content world or the content world overall?
Yeah, I guess maybe I'm biased 'cause it's how I did it, but I don't really think of it as content creation, and like I don't force anything. I got lucky, and the thing that I did for fun grew an audience, and was interesting enough for people to gravitate towards. But I do think if I forced it, it wouldn't have ever gotten to that point and would have failed. So, at a bare minimum, making sure that whatever you're doing, you actually feel passionate about and care about and want to pursue versus, forcing yourself to go down a path just because you think it might get you money or get you fame or get you whatever it is that, you're looking for. So I think the best content ends up being like genuine, and because people just would make it for free and make it if there was no audience.
And now you've been able to evolve the channel into a book also. So was that something you've been thinking about for a while, or how did that come about?
Yeah, not really. It was just peer pressure of people being like, "You need to write a book," and I was like, "No." And then the constant stream of people being like, "You need to write a book," and then a bunch of folks that like helped out along the way of whether it was like working to find the right publisher, like through a literary agent, and working with the Getty to do the image licensing to help pull off, and a lot of other folks basically help bring this thing into fruition, which is great. But it was never at like I always figured, okay, like this would be cool as a coffee table book, but I wasn't gonna go out and email a bunch of people and be like, let's do this. But yeah, eventually the right people kind of reached out and we made it happen. So excited about how it came out, and it's fun. People send pictures of like their kids reading it, and they're like, I can never get my kid to be interested in art, but like this has been the one thing that they gravitate towards, and feedback like that is super rewarding and fun to see.
The book released this year, but how long has the process been to get it
Yeah,
there?
it was like a year plus prior to when it came out, maybe even 2 years. I don't know. It was a while back and forth on figuring out the right images and what should the thing look like, and doing the actual writing because there's a big component of that. So yeah, it was a pretty long process, but excited about how it came out.
How did you approach like curating the moments or the pairings or the artwork that will make it into the book?
A lot of it is just like goats, right? Like the greatest of all time, whether it be photos or athletes that I tried to feature, like Katie Ledecky, Serena, Usain Bolt, right? Like these icons that, whether you're from the U.S. or globally, or these are just people that everybody kind of knows, and just sort of the top moments of from like a visual standpoint that I could bake in, and a lot of it is just because I don't have to worry about just using viral images. It's like the highest quality of sports photography that I could bake in.
How was it creatively to create a book instead of just on digital?
It took a lot of time. Um, I used to be a writer, so it was like finding those muscles again. But yeah, it was good. It was, yeah, a lot of work and like nights and weekends of doing it. Full time job. Like very much didn't let the book, you know, conflict with that. So just really had it always just be a side kind of project in my free time. But yeah, having your free time taken up by a book is you make some sacrifices, but think it ended up being worth it.
And is it something you want to do again?
I don't know. Maybe. I haven't really given it a ton of thought. I think it's just crazy to me that I'm like I can hold something that I made in my hands, and that alone is pretty rewarding. Um, so if I did another one, it would have to be for the right reasons, and I don't know if I would just like, you know, copy paste in terms of the same concept and write a sequel in that capacity or try something new. And I have to like get a good night's sleep and give it some thought.
And overall, do you see art but make it sports evolving in any ways in the future, or do you feel like what do you see?
I made another account just called Art But Make It Now because people would send in like political images and like pop culture images, and I'd post them to the sports account, and people would be like, "Stick to sports." I was like, "But I want to do these," so I just made it a separate account. I don't post to it nearly as often. They tend to do pretty well though. Obviously, like politics and pop culture are just as, if not more, interesting to people than the sports angle. And I think there are similar components between politics and art that and pop culture and art that you can draw on. So I gave myself like a separate outlet to you know do those images. Probably have like a show in person, taking my work, probably the work of sports artists that I enjoy, having it like come to life in a gallery or a physical space. But yeah, I'm really bad. Like people are like you need an agent, and like I had a literary agent, which was really helpful on the book side. But they're like, oh, you gotta maximize the return on investment and the business of this. And it's like, yeah, it's like not what I care about. So we'll see. I think a gallery show would be fun. Mostly just like expose people to the sports artists that I enjoy, and have like a community place to talk about why sports are artistic and important in the fine arts realm, um, and also for like the educational aspect. But
You yourself has remained low key, pretty like yourself and your own. With the account has become huge, so that was intentional, I guess.
yeah, I mean, hopefully people listening aren't like influencers, but like I don't know, I don't really enjoy social media anymore. For you open it up and it's just like constant people trying to sell you stuff and convince you to do stuff. And I don't know, I come from the age of the internet where it was much more people doing creative, unique things, and they didn't really care about where those things took them. Now it's like everything is has a DraftKings promo code attached to it, or somehow an advertisement, even if it isn't on the surface, and just like pretty fundamentally against the usage of the internet for that. So I'll do like collaborations with teams, and streaming networks that have like sports documentaries and whatnot, but it's very much still creating the same content. It just gives me an opportunity to focus in on like a specific component of the content that I make, but it will always be the same drill of like putting art against sports and not really trying to get anybody to do anything other than like think about this thing that's being featured a little bit deeper. So yeah, I don't know. It's I guess I've stayed low key because I don't want to. It's all about the work itself, not really about me per se.
Hear you. I think we're from the same generation in this. But your account, like you mentioned, social media has grown in a different way, and your account like exists in an interesting intersection between sports culture and internet culture and all these things. So how do you think social media overall has changed how sport is or fans experience sport moments?
It's pretty exhausting, just in the sense of that news cycle moves pretty quickly. And I come from the time period of like throwing on Sports Center in the morning and seeing highlights and opening up the New York Times and reading through the box scores and transactions and the sports section. And I don't know, that was my enjoyable relationship with sports. And now you have to be pretty deliberate in terms of being able to curate that experience for yourself via social media. I think it definitely strips away some of like why we love sports. That hopefully my account does its part in trying to get people back into the mindset of we appreciate it for its artistry and what the things that it makes us think that are go beyond a highlight clip that's just out there to generate generate views.
Has Art But Make It Sports changed how your relationship with sports?
Not really. Just like always something that I did naturally anyways. Um, it's more my relationship with sports has changed from like my full-time job. Just working in live sports can really burn you out in terms of watching sports, and I really only consume the best of the best now, and like the top competitions I'll always throw something on in the background. But yeah, like what, 15 coming up on maybe 20 years of being in the sports industry, it's like there's only so much. So yeah, when I worked on the Olympics, it was like 11 o'clock at night. Worked at NBC, and this thing is broken, and you gotta go on and fix it because it's live sports. And all right, we need to do something for this game that's happening, and you do enough of those reps, and you're like, oh my god. And I gotta separate my fandom from my real life in some capacity. So.
And you mentioned giving proper credit to photographers or proper credit to the creators, but do you have any other pet peeves in social media or content creation when you see like this grinds my gears?
Yeah, it's definitely the biggest one. It doesn't really make sense to me that like the team accounts and like league accounts often won't put photographer attribution. I don't really get why they don't do it. Like I understand they don't have to. Yeah, it's like these photographers are artists in their own right, and I just hate when images go viral and nobody knows who actually took it. And I would love if people took the time to like learn about different sports photographers and the techniques and just kind of the work that goes into pulling these images off. Like my ultimate goal now, or one of the ultimate goals, is to really just like highlight that through the account. So yeah, that's definitely like by far the biggest pet peeve.
When people follow you or see the things you're posting, do you hope that they are feeling some type of way?
I hope it inspires them to think about things on the sports and art side differently, I guess. I don't have an end goal of like what they should be thinking, other than like maybe they want to go to a museum or, learn something about the sports that are being featured and the photographers that are being featured. So I have like no end goal in terms of dictating what that thing should be, but I do think the best content on the internet makes you think deeper and makes you research. I mean, that's what I did with myself with art, right? I love falling down Wikipedia wormholes and, learning more about how art is connected. And yeah, it's the best stuff on the internet should do that.
And right now, or looking ahead, do you have anything special that creativity you feel like you're excited about?
I mean, NBA playoffs, and then ultimately like WNBA playoffs. Those are when, like, I don't know, part of I think what makes Hoops great is you get the on the court stuff, but there's like the off the court drama and sort of these additional storylines that tend to pop up, and we're right in the wheelhouse for those moments. So I always look forward to this time of year. But I don't know. Again, like, just the making of these things is what I enjoy. So it's like just getting to make more stuff, getting to, I don't know, keep my brain going. Seeing there's always a lot of art exhibitions that open up in the summer in the city, and getting to see those. So always kind of collecting more inspiration.
It's been really nice talking with you today, LJ. I learned a lot, and it's been really fun to get to know your process and your creative thoughts.
Yeah, thanks for giving me a chance to talk about it. Really appreciate it.
And my last question always on this pod is if you have any creator or anyone that you would be interested to hear on this podcast.
That's a good question. I'm not going to pronounce his name right, but it's Greg. I think it's Greg, Graig, Krindler. I don't know if you know who that is, but he's an artist that paints like old school baseball scenes, often I think referencing photos. Graig, and his last name Kreindler. It's like photorealistic, but something about how he does it just captures like the nostalgia of baseball. It's just perfect. So I really enjoy his work and would love to hear more about like how he does it and his thought process on like sourcing.
Thank you so much, LJ.
Yeah, thanks again.